I call to order the Committee of the Whole Board meeting on Tuesday, October 15th, 2019 at 6:34 in the OPRF HS boardroom. Do we have, do you do
roll call
first? Okay.
So Mr. Kowski?
Here.
Ms. Spivey?
Here.
Mr. Barron?
Here.
Mr. Isley?
Yep.
Mr. Martiri?
Here.
Ms. Harris?
Here.
And Dr. Moore?
Here.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with visitor comments. So we ask that people limit public comments to matters within the jurisdiction of the Committee of the Whole meeting and to confine them to 3 minutes. The section is not intended to be a dialogue with the Committee of the Whole. Do we have anyone who would like to make public comment?
I believe we do, so just one moment.
Mr. Bernstein, can you give me 1 second? I'm going to use my phone to sign. You may proceed. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Marty Bernstein. I live on Gunderson Avenue in Oak Park. And I have a few words to say about Umoja. I think I'm pronouncing it right. A couple of years ago when Imagine was in process, a company called Unicom ARC was awarded a contract for services regarding public comment essentially on the Imagine program. And I saw that item on the board agenda and I saw the price of it. And I saw that there was a section for other funds, expenses, stuff like that. And after a FOIA request, I received the information. The cost of the contract was $3,800 a month for 17 months, a little bit over $64,000. But all the other undefined monies almost doubled the potential total cost of the contract to over $100,000. So I came to the board and I spoke about that. I don't know if it had anything to do with it, but a couple months later the contract got canceled. What that has to do with Umoja, I saw in the Wednesday Journal today that that's on this agenda and there's going to be discussion about it. And I saw that the value of that contract is $25,150. But there's a line item for what's called substitutes for $15,000, which amounts to a 60% potential total increase in the spend on that contract if you were to award it. So what I would like to see the board do on agenda items for awarding contracts is at the end of the agenda item, have a line that states what the total potential spend on any particular contract item could be. And the first reason for that is the 6 of you sitting here and the 7th on the phone. So you don't get blindsided like the board did when I showed up here the first time and said, you're voting on something that's worth twice as much as what the item says. I think you all need to know what the final potential dollar item on any contract you might approve is. So I suggest that the board take that under consideration and start writing agenda items like that. On the other side of this project, I attended one of the practice sessions for restorative justice. It was an interesting thing for me. I'm not sure how I feel about restorative justice because I don't quite understand it yet. But I would just echo the comments that I read in the Wednesday Journal today from Dr. Moore and Mr. Martiri. We need more information about what this is actually going to accomplish before you guys go ahead and spend $25,000 or $30,000 or $40,150. Other than that, this is my first appearance before the new board, so hi, and hi. No, hi. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make public comment? No.
I don't
Is there
have
anyone in the audience who has not signed up who would like to make public comments? No. All right, thank you. Our next item is approval of the September 17th, 2019 minutes. Is there a motion? second?
Second.
Joe Grossman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright. And I think our first item is instruction. Greg, want to do new courses?
The first item is under instruction course proposal. For the 2021 school year, the board received the comprehensive summary as well as the catalog. After the conclusion of the presentation given by Dr. Greg Johnson, Associate Superintendent, and Dr. Lori Fiorenza, the recommendation is that we move this forward for the October 24th board meeting for formal approval. This item is in compliance with Strategic Plan Priority 2, Board Goal 1, and Board Policy 6:40.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Just by way of a quick introduction, there are, as you see in the cover memo that we sent for this item, we have quite a few changes to our academic catalog right now. 9 additions, 45 revisions, 1 deletion, almost across all of our divisions. In some, let me just say, as a final note of introduction to it before I open it up to questions, that with a few specific exceptions, of course, we kind of see 3 different things here. We see, number 1, our world languages division, a great simplification of how we name our courses for greater transparency with both our students, families, universities, and so on. We see changes to enhance and make more clear our dual credit offerings. You also see that with our partnership with Concordia for our Grow Your Own program. But I will also say that most strikingly, perhaps, we see a number of changes in our family consumer science courses. We're revising those significantly. That crew I talked about a year ago has done some pretty progressive work to bring up the curriculum to industry standards for the course, further moving away from historically what had been kind of a home ec approach to one that is much more focused on the workplace. And so you see an increase in dual credit offerings and course titles that help to illustrate a movement towards industry credentials that our students will be able to earn while still in high school or shortly after leaving high school as a result of their programming here. So with that said, I'll open it up if there are any questions for me and Dr. Fiorenza.
Anyone have any questions? No? Jackie, do you have any questions?
Sarah, I had a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to know about a couple of things. One had to do with the Concordia course,
Right.
and it talks about the qualified. I can't remember the language exactly. Qualified seniors,
Right.
or academically, and I'm trying to understand exactly what that means, and also how this links with our Grow Your Own program in terms of how recruitment and trying to have an increase in students of color participating in this class.
So second one first, it is the course that is linked to our Grow Your Own program. And so this past year, our counselors have, they worked hard to try to get a large number of students in or recruit this as widely as possible. I think we talked about that last spring too. And while we are running this right now, it really is a small pilot dual credit. We have, I think, actually, when we got to all the schedules, we actually only have 1 student who's over at Concordia at the current time. Despite the fact that in late spring, we had a number of students who wanted to try to find a way to get this into their schedule. But we found that after schedules had been selected for students, they had already gone through the registration process by the time the Grow Your Own program got developed last spring. And clearing their schedules for the number of periods it needed to go over to Concordia, and the travel time back and forth was just a challenge that even the students who were interested found that they couldn't get into their schedules. But we do believe that with much better syncing up with our actual registration process, we're going to be able to grow that quite a bit in accordance with the goals to try to get students of color into this program. The exact score criteria to get into Concordia was something that we discussed quite a lot back and forth with them last year in accordance with those goals you were referencing. And I don't I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, Jackie, but I can find that out and communicate that out to the board at a later time.
Jackie, excuse me, Jackie, did you have any other questions? Based on that from the
Actually, the connection is kind of poor, so I heard 2/3, so I will reserve further questions, because I'm not sure if the ones I asked were completely answered, because part of it cut out, and I don't want to spend time having to rehash, so I can get the information later.
Yeah, Jackie, we can follow up. I will follow up with you later, okay?
Okay.
Any questions from
Okay.
anybody else? No? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item is the summer school report. Coming forward to make the presentation, joining Mr. Johnson, Associate Superintendent, is Mr. Jason Lee, Summer School Coordinator. This item is for information and discussion only, and is in compliance with Strategic Plan Priority 2 and District Policy 6:40. Gentlemen?
My apologies here. We have an abridged presentation than the one that we sent you in your packet, just for the sake of brevity. And so I just had to switch out laptops here. But we are good to go. And so, do you want to click?
Mike?
I'll click and you tell me.
All right, that's fine. Hey, good evening, everyone.
Speak right into it.
Right into the mic. All right, can you hear me?
Just-
Yeah. it's
We have
our
one
team
person on the
here.
phone.
Oh, okay, very good.
Thanks.
So my name is Jason Lee, and this is actually my second year doing summer school. So it's really nice to be able to do a comparison of 2018 summer school and 2019. So I'll try to do this quickly. I know that you received 55 slides that you had a chance to review, and so we'll try to do some brevity here and try to be as succinct as possible, so leave some time for you to ask questions. Okay, first one. So overall program overview, what did we offer? We offered uncapped registration, digital literacy, financial literacy, reading strategy, creative writing, beyond, X, math, adventure, exploration, and experimentation. The summer school programs, I think, was the same, except for the theater production of Matilda, which was a hit. It sold out all 4 nights in the little theater. If you got a chance to see it, it was fantastic. Who was in the building? When did this happen? We had 4 days for students and staff. It was Monday through Thursday. And we had 1,138 students complete 1,557 credits. Next. Changes in course offerings. We offered uncapped courses in digital literacy, financial literacy, and creative writing workshop. Art Foundation's a little different this year. What we did was we created a randomized process for registration, meaning that we allowed opportunity for all parents to be able to go into this randomization generator pool. Data systems can explain it much better than I can with Mr. Thiem if you have questions regarding that, but it provided access for more opportunity for parents that wanted that class. Courses that were canceled were Beyond Mathematical Adventure and Exploration, Experimentation, and Science. And I think part of that might have been due to the fact that we saw a increase of students and parents that wanted classes for credit versus classes for as an elective. The added class was computer science. We had 2 sections, and we were very thankful and grateful for that because we found a teacher to teach that class. So we had a total of 139 total teaching staff in the summer, and it was nice to see that 41% of our teaching staff were teachers of color. So our initiatives. We increased the summer school fees from $210 to $250, which is a 40% increase, which you approved last year. We eliminated the 12-day sections, something that parents and families appreciated, that for all those that qualified for free reduced lunch during the school year, they didn't have to pay for summer school. We continued with the food service to include a number there for breakfasts and lunches for students in 8 to 9 connections. If you're in ESY, you're probably wondering why is the number for lunches higher than the breakfast. It was due to the fact that Dr. Walker Qualls worked on a grant so that we could provide lunch for our ESY students. We changed the registration platform from Skyward for Family Access versus RevTrack to make it easier for better access and accessibility and flexibility. And we had ongoing registration through the school year. And we developed an online school student handbook that was much more user-friendly than in the past. So if you Google Oak Park or Forest in the website and put summer school, that new handbook was thanks to Ms. McGui. But we're there. Yeah, she spearheaded that. And we hired a robust and diverse staff to represent and reflect our student body, which I just shared. Next, our program objective, providing high quality program for our students. And our evaluation goals was to understand, review, and implement recommendations from last summer to this summer, looking at our quality programs we offered and to the extent in which it was equitable across our entire student population. We did this by looking at 5 evaluation questions of the changes we made from 18 to 19 and how our programs and how they perform. To find our answers to those questions, we looked to gather data, overall student enrollment data from year to year, as you can see all the different bar graphs from the 55 slides that you reviewed. So we did a comparison for our major classes, looked at our internal and external teachers, our registration process, our grades, race, and our specific programs. Feedback from our parent focus group that we had, there were about a dozen parents that showed up on July 16th, and it's nice to see that there were just as much positives as suggestions that they asked. It was nice to see. I think one of the parents said that it was the first time they heard their child say, "I love a class" during the summer. Suggestions, though, that they were still asking were in regards to the wait lists, home study, e-learning, quality homework, and then just overall communication on timelines and dates. The next part, summary of our major findings, and this is in no particular order, but I think it's imperative and important that we try to highlight and bullet point some of the things, the changes that we made from 2018 to 2019 and what that looked like. So the 3 most popular classes were financial literacy, digital literacy, and art foundations, and we uncapped financial literacy and digital literacy, and we found there was an increase of 32 Black and Hispanic students due to uncapping that class. And for digital literacy, we found that there was an increase of 38 White and Asian Pacific Islander students. Art Foundation, due to the fact that we were able to randomize it, we had a 5% increase of Black students, but there was a 6% decrease of Hispanic students as other racial groups appeared to have little change. The other 2 bullet points I think that we need to highlight here that I put on here was that there was no difference in 2018 and 2019 regarding the percentages of our student enrollment, which I found quite interesting. Mr. Johnson and I were talking about this earlier, is that summer school is almost identical as our overall student enrollment for our regular school year if you look at those overall percentages. And unfortunately, the next bullet point there too, that summer school seems to be continuing to be used differently, as whites predominantly attend summer school before their freshman year, decreasing their participation year after, and African American students predominantly attend summer school before their senior year with their participation lower in each of the preceding years, as we saw that data points from that graph. Other major findings, it was nice to see from 2018 to 19 that there was a 9% increase of AB grades for Black students compared to their white counterparts that stayed steady at the mid 90%. 12% of our students had their summer school fees waived, which I think was a testament of the board being able to prove that. And from 2018 to 19, we noticed that there was an increase in credits earned through the ISCR program. As you can see from the numbers, we had 202 for 2019 and 166 in 2018, which was an increase of about 36 students. The next point there's a typo there. It says 324, but your slide for the 55 is correct. There were 333 credits earned as part of our credit recovery program, with 67% of those credits earned by Black and Hispanic students. 8 to 9 connections allowed 36 students to earn high school credit before entering 9th grade year. All students earned A's and B's. And unfortunately, there was a significant decrease in the AP Summer Bridge program, and you just need to do better. Recommendations for summer school 2019.
Can I just ask if you have any idea why there was that
Can you use the
decrease?
micro? Check is on phone.
Do you have an idea why we had that decrease? Because that popped up when I went through the 57
absolutely.
or whatever slides it is.
Well, there are 2 reasons. So we looked at that quite extensively, Ralph, and so we found 2 things. One, we knew going into the program, and that's that the teacher who had really kind of championed that course going back 3 years now was doing an overseas program this summer. So he did half of the time, right? Last year students were enrolled for a total of 6 weeks. This year it was total for 3 weeks. And so you would think if that was the only decrease, we would see numbers decrease by about half from last year. That's not what we see. And so we went back to our notes from our meetings, and actually at a conference I was at just this past weekend, I ran into Jonathan Weintraub, who was the administrator during the summer who was in charge of this, and I was able to talk with him even before and more thoroughly here about exactly how what happened there. And he was able to confirm that the way that we had communicated this out to our families, to our counselors, through the administration was identical to what we had done the previous year. And so what we were able to whittle this down to the best that we can understand right now, is that unbeknownst to us, really, a lot of what had gone on in previous years was the product of not only the teacher who did teach this course, recommending this course and getting people in, but another teacher who no longer works for us, who was individually very aggressive in recruiting students into the program. It was kind of outside of the system that happened, and we weren't aware of that as we went into the system this past year, that was a significant source of it. So, but either way in that, I mean, that responsibility still falls on us. So the enrollment trends there are really problematic, and so we have to make sure this is a program we value. It's incredibly important for our students to be able to use it to be more successful during the school year in the RAP program, which is why we're collecting the data we are. So as we move into future years, we're going to have to address that and get more people involved and make sure that we are all, administration, counselors, teachers, working in really tight sync to make sure we are getting the right message out to our kids and getting the right students into this program to make it what we want it to be.
Right, so the recommendations for the summer school 2019, plan to respond to facility changes for the 22-23 year. There will be some driver ed changes beginning this summer due to the breaking ground and the South Cafe, which I was informed that's going to occur, which is going to limit the driving simulators not being in use. Site availability in 2021, and I think it starts with we need to start communicating to families that it's going to be some changes occurring. We want to continue the goals from previous years, but we want to permanently implement changes from last year by continue with the providing free tuition waivers to all students who receive free and reduced lunch, move caps on certain summer school offerings, and offer breakfast and lunch for any students in need. We want to expand course offerings to better meet the needs and interests of our students, and that goes out to reaching out to some of the families and what they want summer school to look like for them, particularly for some of the enrichment classes that I think we need to continue to implement. And then the last one here, we want to evaluate the effect of online credit courses taken during the school year on the summer school enrollment, meaning that we've learned from counselors that there are quite a few students that take online classes from accredited colleges that we accept, such as financial literacy or keyboarding. We want to know the extent and the scope of what that looks like. The next slide, our proposed summer school for 2020. We'd like to continue with the full session classes only from June 8th to July 16th. Fortunately this year, July 4th is on a Saturday, so we don't have to worry about having to extend or make up that day. The daily class schedule is follows below that you see there, and the course fee would like to continue to remain at $250, with some courses having additional fees. And then the open house, we learned that it will be on January 21st, which is usually the first week of February, so it's going to be up a couple of weeks earlier, so we're going to have to do some pre-planning, getting ahead of the ball on that. So I'll leave the floor open for any questions that you may have regarding our report.
You know, if I can just say one thing really quickly too. Once we get to go back to a point made on our previous slide about facilities changes and the effect on that, we're still in the process right now as a district of trying to figure out exactly how we're going to respond to the challenges that we're going to have this summer. We have a pretty solid idea, but in the next few several weeks we'll be able to nail that down. And at that point, once we realize that, we'll be able to bring a proposed budget to the board for summer school 2020. Okay.
Questions? Tom?
Yeah, in line with that last statement, are we looking beyond, related to summer school and facilities, because it's been brought up and they know there's still work being done, are we looking beyond the confines of this building as a source?
We probably know more information about that.
Well, the answer to your question is yes. We aren't quite sure. A number of different sites from schools in our feeder districts to colleges, universities right around us. Even Fenwick was thrown in as a possibility. So we are looking at outside institutions. But we also know that we are looking to ramp up our e-learning during the summer as well. We see summer school in a lot of ways as a way to kind of experiment and pilot, some things that we want to bring into the regular school year. E-learning is a prime example. So you don't want to lose that.
And Greg, on the e-learning, so do we give our faculty that engage in providing online courses training on how to do that? They go through any kind of professional development there?
Yeah, we're going to have to in order to scale it up the way we're talking about it. Right now, to the extent that we've done it, it's been something that we've provided training for just locally in-house pretty simply. Or we've had people who have just had that background and they're solid and good to go right now. So, but if we're going to scale it up, P's non-negotiable.
Yeah, no, I have to say, it's not an easy thing to do if you're not used to doing it. I had to go through PD on that at Roosevelt University, and I did my first online courses last summer, and it was one of the biggest challenges I ever faced as a faculty member. So I would highly recommend, if we're gonna ramp it up, that we really give them the PD they need.
We'll bring you in for the PD.
It's different
okay?
to do online.
And I know Dr. Moore has some questions, and she also, I think, is struggling to hear. So just a reminder to use the microphones, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Jackie?
Okay, I'm gonna try this. I'm not sure if I can't hear. This will be my last try to ask questions. I had two questions. One about the AP program. I know Ralph asked a question about that, but mine has to do with recruitment. And is there a plan in place to standardize how we recruit for these classes and, beyond making sure, I guess, whose responsibility is it, and how are we identifying students for the AP Bridge class? Because it's unclear, how we're ever going to have a systematized process for recruitment if we don't know who's doing it and with fidelity.
Yeah. Ultimately, I will say that the responsibility to make sure that those recruitment efforts are successful are mine. The way that process works, however, is that we work with our counselors and through our student services department to make sure that the consistent information goes out to our students, and that also they have individual conversations with students. Both of which we are able to know that that messaging did go out last year, like I said. But as we move forward, we're going to have to make a renewed push, not only to make sure that messaging, in fact, does go out the way we want and is consistent in that, but also to make sure that the conversations with our students are happening on a consistent basis as we lead up to summer school, so that we can get students in and they can benefit from the program.
I would concur with that too, in addition to making sure that the department heads are aware how important this program is. And I think there's also a competing factor too when it comes to summer school. You didn't mention about summer camps, but when some kids have a choice between whether or not they want to be on the football field or playing basketball or these other things, it competes with trying to get these kids recruited also for the AP Bridge program. But we have to do a better job in trying to consolidate and making sure that there's opportunities for both.
Yes, Gina?
And I appreciate doing a better job. I'm really crying out for something, a process that shows what we've done and making sure that we know the information goes out, or that the expectation is that it's given to counselors and they're relaying it. But if we don't know for sure if it goes beyond, how do we, what's the check to make sure? Because competing interests, I know that there were parents that wanted their kids to do this and didn't have any idea about it.
Right. I appreciate that. And Jackie, I apologize if what I tried to communicate out isn't clear. The exact.
Something to consider.
Yes, thank you. The exact process that we'll use to monitor that, I'm not prepared to throw out to us right now, but I can guarantee that we will use a process to monitor that, and that's something that we will work on internally for sure.
Is there anything, Greg, that's you can make systematic out of the recruitment efforts by the successful teachers that did get kids in the program that you could somehow scale up and
Can you
use?
speak into the mic, please?
Yeah.
I am.
But you know, they let it right on.
Yeah, I think you have to eat the mic.
Surprise.
Taste it.
So I was just wondering if you do have to eat the mic.
Mm-hmm.
I was just wondering if there were any practices that are scalable and repeatable from the two faculty members who were very effective at recruiting students into the program.
Well, what we found is that those teachers were successful because of relationships that they had with students. And so one thing we named in a conversation I just had 2 days ago about this, 3 days ago now about this, was the need to maximize on those relationships that we already have in place. Students we found were likely to enroll in the past because the teacher they knew and trusted said, hey, this is the place for you, I want you here. And so we have to specifically go that route. So working with division heads, as Jason just alluded to, is a key piece. That's one strategy, but also simply making sure that we're covering the breadth of our student population as we have those conversations is really important. This can't just be something that we rely on in 2 or 3 pockets because of relationships. We want to utilize those, but not depend on them.
That was, my question was actually Jackie's question, and then kind of preempted me.
Yeah.
But thanks, Ron. What you mentioned, even anecdotally, you spoke to the relationships and like how important the relationships are in the building. And I'm curious, I was just curious what other relationships, like when you talk about the department heads, what I'm not clear on is the department head-student relationship and how that information filters through and like the connections that might be there.
Yeah, I missed the step. I mean, I wasn't explaining that whole thing. So relying on the division heads is important so that they can work with their teachers who do have those relationships. Yeah, but I mean, the division heads are our key contact point there.
And then I had one more question about the free and reduced lunch.
Yeah.
You said that 12% had 12% that participated in summer school were free and reduced lunch.
Yes.
What is our free and reduced lunch population of the school?
We are low 20%. I'd have to check it for our current fall housing number, but usually it's last year it was low 20%.
And how is the outreach and the information shared with those families about the fact that they can get summer programming for free?
Yeah, I can answer that question. So what we did was during the open house in February, we pushed that information out, and we also sent it out communication-wise to the feeder schools through, what is it called, a digital backpack, and that information through that route. And parents that struggled, we let them know up front that this is something that we offered for them for the program.
I think I still have a question based upon Gina's question. So we pushed it out through the open house and pushed it out through email. But my guess is we can probably be more effective. Or I'm assuming that's not all we're doing, but it doesn't sound like enough. I mean, are counselors talking to students and saying, summer school's free, feel like boning up for next year, you should be doing this. I mean, I think there are lots of ways that we can reach not just the parents, but the students themselves.
Like direct outreach was what I was curious about, like direct outreach. If we know who those students are, how much direct outreach actually happens to that 20%?
Yeah, we can look at those efforts and examine them for those more specific connections. I mean, I don't want you to walk out of here with the impression that those direct connections did not exist. And I should illustrate what this replaces. So previously, our counselors had each of them a small number of individual waivers that they would grant kids, right, based off of conversations and what they knew. That process is gone now, right? But counselors were afraid of not having that same tool, and so we actually they each had at least one, I believe, is what we settled on for this year, and they weren't all used, and that's because this year, for the first time, every single student who was free and reduced lunch, right, was free as far as summer school is concerned. But I hear the point, right? We want to make sure that we don't now, because it's an automatic process, leave out the one-on-one direct communication. We'll make sure that we focus on that. We'll make that. Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I do have one question about the incoming ninth graders. How are we, I mean, it sounds like we might be pushing stuff out in digital backpacks in 97 and 90, but how are we communicating with the middle school to make sure that teachers at the middle school possibly are able to talk to parents about this and talk to students about this? Is there any connection?
Are you talking about free and reduced lunch, or are you talking about just summer
Students
school?
across the board,
Okay.
all incoming freshmen, to know that summer school is an opportunity and it's an option, and certainly for students that are free and reduced lunch, it's a free option.
Sure. Well, we have a table during that time where parents can come and pass. And we're also going to talk about continuing with the registration process, and we send those flyers out through snail mail and through email to families so that they do understand that it's going to be through their family access to be able to register for classes. I think we just need to talk about ways that we can brainstorm more as a team and what we can do to make sure that families know that this is an opportunity for them.
And I know certainly people of my generation, summer school was not an enrichment program necessarily. It was something that you did when you had to, right? Like that's sort of how I grew up in my community looking at summer school. But it's changed a lot, right? Like the world is very different now. So I think it's important for us to make sure that parents understand that this is an enrichment opportunity. It's not because your kid is struggling or needs the extra help necessarily, but it's an opportunity to just help them sort of expand their exposure. I mean, I think the messaging around that is important because I don't know that people realize how we utilize it here at Opera.
I don't know if that's the case, Sarah, but that very well may be the case. So we will look into that though, definitely. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Just building off what you said, that's a good point, Sarah. If there's a consideration to giving a new name to it, and summer describes the time of year, I think that's important to know, but so maybe summer, and I know it's not all for enrichment.
You are the last party in the
tricky,
conference.
is that it's not, for some it is recovery. So something to ponder, maybe a sub-headline in a good book.
We can work with, we can talk about rebranding.
It's only half kidding, but some kind of way to give that cue. Because I think Sarah's point is a good one.
Welcome to fall semester. Just kidding. Sorry.
What was that?
Nothing. We'll see what we can do.
Is he on a roll this week?
Anybody else?
Yeah, sorry.
All right, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you, man.
As we move into the finance section, because we have guests, I'm going to do item D first, presentation of insurance renewal recommendations. Coming forward to make the presentations, Roxana Sanders, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, Cindy Fedor, Chief Financial Officer. Joining them for this presentation from Gallagher, Lisa Yevsky and Kurt Hines. At the conclusion of this presentation, we will bring this forward at the special board meeting following committee of the whole. This item is in compliance with strategic plan priority 4.
You need to get right on that mic.
Yeah. Please speak into your mic.
Because Jackie is back on the line.
Good evening. Each year we present to the board recommendations from our insurance committee about renewals for all our plans for the following calendar year. As you know, our insurance plans are all on calendar basis, and the insurance committee that is comprised of representatives from administration and all other employee groups. We have some teachers, we have campus safety representatives, support staff, review renewal results that our insurance broker Gallagher presents to us. We asked this year for them to go out to different carriers and obtain competitive marketing results for renewal quotes, and I will let them talk about how that process went through and what were the results.
Great, thank you. Go to the next page. So what we have to discuss with you tonight, we're going to go through the marketing results for the request to market all of the plans, the recommendations for the ancillary plans, recommendations for the medical plan, a little bit of information about the experience for the health insurance program, and the 2020 renewal recommendations from the insurance committee. So first, just to present, we did go to United Healthcare, Aetna, and Cigna to ask them for quotes for the medical plan. The district does have a self-insured program that is administered by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois. All 3 of those other carriers did decline to quote, citing that they were not competitive with your current programs. The dental insurance, again, this plan is self-funded by the district. We did receive quotes from Guardian, Dearborn National, Sun Life, Humana, and MetLife did decline to quote. MetLife is your current carrier for life and disability, but they don't provide administrative services, only self-funded dental programs for groups that are less than 1,000 lives. We did receive vision quotes from IMED, Dearborn, Humana, MetLife, Sun Life for the program. Guardian did decline to quote because they could not be competitive. On the life insurance, we went to a number of carriers, Reliance, Guardian, Humana, Unum all declined to quote that they could not be competitive. With your current program, Dearborn, Sun Life, and Cigna did provide quotes. The recommendation from the insurance committee in regard to the dental program was to remain with Delta Dental. Again, this program is self-funded, so the district pays for the claims. What the carrier does for you is provide a network and they administer the claims for a fee. So we were able to, they asked for their original fee increase and we were able to reduce that admin fee and get a 2-year rate guarantee from them. The dental program, we are looking at a 6.6% increase in funding, which is based on dental trend and an increase in the claims activity. For the vision program, VSB had originally asked for a 22.4% increase. We were able to negotiate that down using competitive information that we had received from MetLife to administer a similar VSP program. So the renewal would be 12% with a 2-year rate guarantee. For the life and disability coverage, this would remain with MetLife. We were able to achieve a 25.3% rate reduction, which relates to savings of $23,626 on an annual basis. The voluntary life, long-term disability would be at no change in rates. These rates would be guaranteed for 2 years. And MetLife did offer the most competitive package for all lines of coverage. So the recommendations from the insurance committee, which we'll talk about again in a few minutes, when they looked at the needed increase for the medical plan, they are making a recommendation to increase office visit copays across all plans from $25 for primary care office visits to $35, and from $40 for specialist visits to $50, which equates to a 1.53% overall savings to the plan. The other recommendation is to increase the specific stop loss from $130,000 to $135,000 per individual, which equated to a 1% savings. So just to give a little bit more information on a specific deductible, what this means is the district has 2 types of insurance coverage on the medical plan. One is an aggregate umbrella, where there is coverage for the plan above 135% of expected claims, so consider that like an umbrella policy you might have on your home. The other type of insurance coverage is a specific deductible, which means that the district is responsible for the first, currently $130,000 on a large claim for any one individual. So say an individual had claims of $500,000, the district would fund the first $130,000, and then the stop loss coverage would pick up the remainder. So the recommendation on the stop loss is to just boost that up by $5,000, so it was significant savings for what the potential cost could be if you had large claims of the $5,000, and we'll talk about that in just a second.
If we jump over to the next slide, the trend that we're referring to here is the overall book of business trend that we're seeing across like the industry. And when we look at the PPO blended trend of 5.7%, that's the medical trend and the prescription drug trend. And then the HMO blended trend is reflected at 5.8%. Probably that's more so because the drugs may have a little bit more of an impact because of the physician service fees that are more on a fixed or capitated arrangement. So that's a little bit higher from that perspective. We did see an actual increase in the total claims on a PEPM basis, per employee per month basis, from the prior year to the current period. And I think that on the PPO, we were looking at about a 10% increase overall on the PPO side. On the HMO, it was coming up about 8% over what the prior period was. So that's big pieces that were driving the increase. We did see for the large claims over the 130,000 specific stop loss level in the experience periods that we used in the renewal calculation. It was in 2018 there were 4 totaling 825,000 versus in 2019 there were 5 totaling 1.14 million. And in the HMO there was 1 in the prior period at 299 and 1 in the current at 142,000. So there is a little bit of an improvement from that perspective. If we want to jump to the next slide. Some of the plan options that were looked at for 2020 were increasing the specific deductible from 130 to 135, which was worth about -1%, increasing the office visit copay from the 25.40 to the 35.50 -1.5. Looked at increasing the out-of-network, out-of-pocket maximum on the PPO low from the 750 to the 1,500 for the single was worth -1. ER copays -0.22, inpatient copays, so on and so forth. I don't know if you have any questions on that, or Lisa, if you have anything you'd like to add.
No, it's just, the insurance committee did do a lot of work looking at all of these options and, weighed them carefully and went with the 2 that were on the top is what they're recommending. And then this slide just represents the proposed medical plans. You can see the HMO plans. So the district does offer HMO Illinois, which is the large network, as well as the Blue Advantage, which is a smaller network through Blue Cross. Current PPO plan, the PPO low. You can see that you did reach agreement that you're terminating the VIVA program as of January 1st. And you can see your new plan that you had also negotiated, the PPO 750, which will be offered to staff 1/1 as well. You can see in the red and the green where the changes are for what the staff, the insurance committee is recommending.
And just kind of to summarize the renewal increase, the original renewal came in at 7.4%. And again, that was a product of the claims increasing on the PPO and the HMO. And what happens with the unified increases is normally groups are going to be rated with their plan designs together because they don't want to. It's always better to try to keep the benefit differentials set at a certain level in order to ensure that you don't see big swings in claims from one year to the next because you may have smaller populations, the law of large numbers, if you will. So that's where if the PPO may have gone up by, what did I have here? I don't have that number. Oh, the PPO went up 6.5. Well, for the final renewal numbers that we came up with, the PPO was up 6.5. The HMO was up, I think, around 5.8% for the blended increase, or the combined unified increase of 4.87% across the board, and that includes the increasing the specific deductible from 130 to 135 in the office visit copay and terminating the 1,500 plan as well. So, any other questions on?
Any questions?
Or any questions? I know it's insurance and very exciting.
Would you like to start us off?
Yeah, I have 3 questions. And for the first one, Roxanne, for you probably is, what change occurred in our reserve, our fund balance in the past year? Have we depleted or increased, in terms of coming into this, and where do we stand versus where we want to be?
Actually, probably a Cindy question.
All right, you can pay.
We've actually decreased. I don't know the total amount, but we have decreased on it. I think we had, if I'm not mistaken, last time it was 1.5 million in there.
So in terms of our desire, is our desire to hold, to increase or decrease based on where we end up here? Are we trying to deplete it, or are we trying to stay where we are related to that? Because in prior years, we've been heavy, right? We've had, and so we've made decisions intentionally to do some things. So I just want to understand how that factored into any of the recommendations, if it did.
I don't think it did. I don't think, no, we didn't have any discussion about that.
Can you speak just a little louder?
Sure, yes. No, there was no discussion about the reserve on that.
Okay. I have a question just to understand, and that, which is, in looking at the data, when you get into your PE per employee, PEMP, you show, like you mentioned, an 8% increase for the PPO from year to year, and then you show the projected value that's a 24% increase. So I know there's a lot of other stuff going on, but can you explain that, or did I just calculate wrong?
I guess I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to with the 24%. I know when I was making the comparison with the projected claim cost from last year to this year, I think last year the projected claim cost was coming in at 1225 PEPM on the PPO, and this year, for 2020, I should say, the projected claim cost was coming in at 1331, which was about 8.7% increase just on the claim piece of it. And then on the HMO, for the claim piece, we were looking at 593.81 last year for the projected versus 679.36 is what we're projecting for 2020, which was about a 14.4% increase. So sometimes the numbers can get a little convoluted too, and we might see fluctuations in enrollment, and that's why we always like to be able to make the comparisons on a PEPM, because that helps to account for the shifts in any enrollment.
Okay, so just you use some numbers. So I'm looking at this, 1331 is the projected. This, and then you show, I think it was 1010 going up to 1095, which is your increase, correct?
The reference documents.
Yeah.
This is,
Oh, the projection.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. The pieces that I'm comparing is the PEPM claim cost after all large claims have been removed. And when we look at this, we always want to add back in the non-pooled portion to account for any of the large claims. So if we look down at the adjusted claim costs, or I'm sorry, the large claim adjustment, I don't know, about 7 or 8 rows lower than that.
Okay, so it's the big thing is looking at it after you've taken out the big one.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
My last question is, go back. You had a series of options or modifications to the plans that you looked at. So from a criteria and a process standpoint, because as I look at those options, they each can impact different entities. And the overall, where is it? The specific deductible, that all comes right out of the district. I mean, no individual is paying for that, correct?
Correct.
So they've already exhausted it, so it's out of the district. So I guess the question I have is, what was the criteria and process by which you went through this list and said, these are the ones that work?
We looked at the overall financial impact. We also looked at what impact it would have on employees. Because of the recent negotiations with the faculty senate, the PPO law was the only plan where the contribution levels changed. So employees who are on PPO law now pay 3% more compared to other plans. And that was done, obviously, with an intent to move people from PPO law, which is our most expensive plan, to less expensive plans. However, the committee felt that for the fairness purpose, you don't want to hit the same people twice. That's why we chose the option of increasing office visit co-pays across PBO and HMO plans at the same time so that everybody is affected equally and also had the highest financial impact. When we looked at the specific deductible, the reason we chose that because we analyzed our risk exposure and we looked at our high claimants. So the only effect is we had 7 large claims, so the only impact on the district is $35,000. We wouldn't lose any of the large claimants that are paid through the stop loss. That was the criteria. Other options here were insignificant, so 0.22, 0.18, so we didn't really spend a lot of time considering those because we didn't feel they had enough of the impact. Do you want to add anything to this?
No, I think you're spot on. When we look at the specific deductible, large claims go up every year, just like medical trend, and so the tactic that you should do is you should apply trend to what that factor is anyway. So the 130 needs to go up. Otherwise, the increase on that is kind of exponential. So Kurt actually was a manager at Blue Cross prior to joining Gallagher. So that helps us when we look at this information. So there's more net savings. Blue Cross was giving us more in savings than the cost would be to go up to 5,000 for the exposures.
Yeah, and I think going from the 130,000 to 135,000, we are actually able to get a pass to the ISL fee. They held
The specific
yeah,
stop
I'm
loss.
sorry, the specific stop loss fee going into 2020. So that's where the savings came in. Is the exposure comes in with $5,000 more per individual, but there is that savings on the specific stop loss premium, which is reflected in the -1%. Unfortunately, I don't have the numbers right in front of me of what the original renewal was.
Craig, I believe you have a question?
Yeah.
Thomas Moore.
Let me build a little bit on Tom's question. The process of deciding which of these to choose and how many of them to choose, what is that process? Like, so we have a 7.4% increase and you chose a couple things to reduce it to 4.8. How did we decide that we were just going to choose 2, why not 3, why not 4 of these things?
We looked at every single option and discussed it. And while we have financial considerations for the district, we also have to think about impact on employees and employee morale. So that is the reason why we decided to limit to 2 options and not go into other options. The other ones that would have been significant was changing the out-of-pocket for in-network visits for PPO low. And again, that was a conscious decision made because there was a lot of discussion during negotiations about the plan design change for PPO law. There was a lot of opposition, so we knew if we hit people on the same plan twice, there would be a lot of dissatisfaction, and that was a conscious decision that the committee has made not to go there this year. But I feel like they're open to having a gradual. They just felt like to hit the same people twice in 1 year would be too much.
So it would be fair to say that there really wasn't any consideration to drive people to the PPO low plan in this particular round of insurance committee review, because that would have meant hitting people twice.
Well, we, as you remember, as a result of negotiations, we also have incentive for people to move from PPO low to other plans. And so I anticipate that we will have some results here. I already see some results with our new hires, because new hires are also given that option. If they don't take the PPO low, they are provided an incentive, and people take advantage of it. So we're hoping to have a combination of more financial costs to people to stay on the plan, but also the incentive of getting financial incentive for moving out of the plan. And we also plan to have some additional education efforts around open enrollment, which we will have at the end of October through November. We will invite again representatives from Gallagher to really explain what the difference is between PPO and HMO, and explain to people that their doctor, oftentimes their doctor is both networks, PPO and HMO, and we have the tool where they can go. Blue Cross Blue Shield actually has on their website where you can go and put in your physician's name, and you can see immediately what kind of insurance that person takes. So that people gradually start realizing, okay, there's really no downside for me to switch from one doctor to another. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that for some people it's just not the option, because they have some specialists that are located in different locations that because of the specific medical issue, HMO is not an option for them. So
yeah, I guess I'd also like to add that what we're doing is we're providing information for you so you can budget for the health plan. The significant amount of what drives the health plan is the claims cost, is the health of your employees, if someone gets sick, if they're healthy. That's what makes the difference. So what we're providing here is this is what we're recommending that you budget. For what Roxanne has said, if people change plans, that change where the funding is as far as how many rates times how many head counts. So that could impact what overall need is. However, at the end of the day, if people are healthier, you're going to come in better than expected. And if they're sicker, then then it could be a higher cost than what we're providing. We can't guess for what people are going to have for health insurance needs. All we can do is just go through the process of here's what they're spending money on today, here's what the trend is, and just apply that to provide you with something to budget.
So let me ask a question. Two other avenues. I don't want to take up too much time, but one more question. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. The question I have is, so given that is the fact, from an insurance committee standpoint, whatever, what are we doing to encourage healthiness? What kind of programs have we put in place to do that?
So we just started last year. We had a wellness screening and encouraged all employees to go and identify or maybe potentially catch some health issue early. We actually, as part of our insurance committee presentation, we had a representative from Empower Health. That's a company that provided wellness screening for us. Come and look at the trends based on the population that participated, and recommend some specific wellness initiatives. So that's in the works. We're planning to offer some specific wellness initiatives to encourage health of our employees.
That's it.
Does anybody else have any questions? Jackie? Jackie, maybe trying to talk and mute buttons on. Okay, I'm assuming we have no more questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the presentation of the levy timeline. Coming to make that presentation is Susan Sador, Chief Financial Officer, Chief School Business Official. The recommendation is that this move forward to the Board of Education for approval for information only at the October 24th, 2019 meeting. This item is in compliance with Strategic Plan Priority 4 and District Policy 4:10.
Good evening. So what this is, it's just the timeline. This is just information. It's just letting you know when we have to do our estimated levy when we need to have it in the paper. If we have to do truth and taxation, then we need to do that, and then also to the adoption. So this again is only information, there's not much more behind it, and I'm not gonna read the dates, because you guys have seen it already. So do you have any questions?
Anyone any questions? Jackie? Thank you.
No, I'm good,
I-
thanks.
I do, just because I think it'd be useful for the board. What, the Community Financial Committee, what will their role be in reviewing around your timeline?
We will be meeting again on November 5th, so that will be the time that they will be making a recommendation at that time. So we will be bringing that forward to the November 12th meeting of the whole meeting.
And what information have you reviewed with them in preparation for this?
We have gone over what the options were for the levy, for this upcoming, for next year's levy, I should say, and also to the 5-year projection. So that will also be coming forward at that time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Jackie, did you have a question?